Let's take a look at how one community is measuring prosperity and how it provides a model for the rest of Pennsylvania. Next on Behind the Headlines.
This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewald, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. My co-host, Maura Donnelly, is on assignment this week. She'll be back very soon with us. But for this week's edition, we have a very special show. We have, I think, a type of show that we haven't done before, talking about the type of project that hasn't been done in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania before. Joining us today, we have Tom Baldrige from the Lancaster County Chamber of Commerce. Tom, you are the president and CEO of the Lancaster County Chamber of Commerce, and your trustworthy vice president and COO, Cheryl Irwin-Bass. You folks decided to do something that hasn't been done in Pennsylvania before, and it really caught our attention. And I think you're getting attention from not only around the Commonwealth, but around the nation, and we'll be continuing to get more. You decided to put together a study, a project that would engage all sectors of Lancaster County and try to determine what the prosperity of the people of Lancaster County is. What was the impetus behind this project, Tom?
Well, the impetus started about 7 years ago when the Chamber conducted a complete review of all their work and their objectives for the upcoming years, and ended up landing on it with a brand new mission statement. And that mission statement was to build Lancaster County into a model of prosperity for 21st century America. When we had that mission statement and the aspirational aspect of it, the first question that arose from that was, how do you define a model of prosperity? If we say that that's what we aspire to be, then how are you going to define it? And it was that question that kind of started us down this journey that realized that we had to find a way to define prosperity within our community, or at least define the elements of prosperity and set benchmarks and objectives so that we could know that as we journeyed down to try to meet our mission statement, there would be milestones along the way that we could measure ourselves against.
Mm-hmm. And Cheryl, what more specifically, Tom mentioned the approach that you were taking. How did you decide to determine the prosperity of Lancaster County residents? I can immediately think of many different ways to do that, and we might not all agree on what those particular indices are. How did you work with the other sectors of the community to actually come up with a portrait of prosperity that you think hits the mark?
Well, it started very broadly. We first started by asking our members and the community at large what prosperity meant to them. Mm-hmm. And we soon found out that that definition was very broad and went well beyond the scope of what the Chamber, typical services and programs covered. It went well beyond just the economy or the health of the business community, but really got into health and wellness, issues, environment, et cetera. And so from there, I had the opportunity, I had applied and was accepted into a program called the Regional Sustainable Development Fellowship, sponsored by the Ford Foundation. And that opportunity really afforded me a lot of different contacts with a lot of different experts in the field. And so
this was a national program
Sure.
that you're involved with here with the Ford Foundation.
Right.
Okay.
And really learned a lot from peer experts and others across the country who have approached similar kind of indicator projects, and learned from them on what were some of the advantages and disadvantages of doing them a number of different ways. One of the things that came out of that was to really engage partners throughout the community, which is really where we came up with the idea of engaging other organizations that had a county-wide mission that were also in some way trying to better Lancaster County, which is where we came up with our partners of the County of Lancaster, the Lancaster County Community Foundation, and the United Way of Lancaster County.
Okay. And Tom, when you developed these prosperity indicators, obviously some were more important than others. How did you go about identifying what was most important? and what would help portray prosperity most accurately within Lancaster County?
Well, at the end of the day, we ended up bringing in experts because we realized that...
Who's an expert on this?
Well, we brought in some research firms that shared their knowledge about what they had found in other parts of the community and certain measurements that they felt were indicative of a community's overall health or prosperity. It's a great point that you mentioned, Charlie, because when you're embarking on this type of thing, as we've said at the beginning, we did this started about 6 years ago. We could still be debating over those indicators and measurements if at some point we just didn't say, okay, we now have to start moving and establish some benchmarks and work off of them into the future. We certainly can adjust them as we need to, but it is very difficult with the measurements because there's a real responsibility behind those measurements. What gets measured gets noticed and gets attention, and if you're doing primary factors versus secondary factors of measurement, you could find yourself going in a direction that may be missing the cause of what a indicator might indicate, and we need to be really careful about that. So
I guess
it took us a long time.
You probably even had arguments about how to measure certain things. I
believe that would be accurate.
Oh, okay. Now, this is not a once and done project. This is, Cheryl, something that's ongoing in Lancaster County, and you intend to do this annually. How long ago did you issue your first result, your first study, and where are you in terms of the next year's study? How will you be progressing from this point on, Cheryl?
Sure. Well, our first real baseline information was revealed last November 2012. That was when we really put out the first report. And while I say baseline, we did go back a few years and try to get several years to at least begin to see a trend in some of the information that we're measuring. We will be doing this on an annual basis. Not every indicator will have new information or change drastically over time, but we do think that there is value in measuring it each year, seeing where we're gaining ground, losing ground. And the real, what we really want out of this is to just influence conversations. And we think that if we keep the results annually in front of organizations and individuals, that they will begin to see where we're making progress, where we may have room for improvement. And the real idea is to not only the 4 partner organizations, but other organizations and individuals throughout the community to really start taking a look at where they can plug in and make a difference. That's really always been the goal. Now,
you mentioned the 4 partner organizations, Cheryl. Are they in this with you, with the Lancaster County Chamber of Commerce for the long haul?
They are.
That's quite a commitment. How did you get such a commitment from other community organizations? This is very impressive.
Well, I think we all agreed that a common set of indicators or common set of measurements would be something that the community could benefit greatly from. So I think at the baseline, that was kind of what everyone agreed to. As Tom said earlier, and as we mentioned before, I mean, there have been little conversations or maybe disagreements along the way about the exact things that we're measuring. But at some point, you need to just pull the trigger, start measuring, and then we can adjust along the way if need be. But all of the organizations have expressed their commitment to use this in their own organizations for strategic planning purposes, for focus of resources. So we really think that the commitment is for the long haul.
Tom, how did you and the Chamber in Lancaster County think of this project? Did you conceive of this project, or was it Cheryl and you together, or was it a number of your members? How did this come about?
It was actually, I'd say it came about initially from our membership and our board of directors, who asked the question, if you're going to be a model of prosperity, how do you measure prosperity so that we know that we got there, or that we're at least headed in that direction? That was the initial question that sparked us down this path, and then, as Cheryl mentioned, her involvement with the Ford Foundation kind of crystallized the opportunity there to learn from others and to recognize how we could try to bring that back to our own community.
Cheryl, working with the Ford Foundation, working on a national level, did you find other county chambers around the country that have done this? And if so, how closely did you model your effort on theirs?
There were a number of different models out there, not only from chambers, but there were economic development companies, other community organizations. It really depended on the community across the country as to who perhaps was spearheading it. I will say that the advice that I received most often was to broaden the scope and include partners, although I have to say that very few examples of that actually happened. So, I mean, I do consider this a real success in the fact that we were able to bring on community partners.
Okay, well, in this next segment, let's bring on some of your partners and let's take a deeper look at this particular project. We'll be right back with the second segment on Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions that make the Commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals to provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Underwriters of America, a better way for truck insurance. And by Penn Waste, your best local choice for your waste removal and recycling needs.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. Again, Maura Donnelly, my co-host, is on assignment for this particular show. But as I stated in our first segment, we are having a very, very important show about a very important development in the Commonwealth, and it's a project that I think is going to be modeled in many other parts of the United States, and it all started here in Lancaster County in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Tom, why you said that you had other partners that joined with you to do this study of prosperity in Lancaster County, and we're fortunate enough to be joined by them around the table. Would you introduce the other principals in this study, please?
I'd be happy to, because as was said in the first segment, if we didn't have the partners in this, this would not have nearly the capacity that it currently has, or the community's attention. So,
certainly.
Joining me to my right is Sam Bressi, the President and CEO of the Lancaster County Community Foundation. To his right is Patrick Jinks, the President and CEO of the United Way of Lancaster County. And to your left, Charlie, is Commissioner Scott Martin, the Chairman of the Lancaster County Commissioners. And this was the group, along with Cheryl and other staff people from other organizations, these organizations that helped pull this all together.
Mm-hmm. Sam, how did this get started? How did your involvement emerge on this project?
Well, actually from a call from Cheryl, and she invited the Community Foundation and along with the United Way in the county to attend a meeting. They had been boiling this, this was simmering under the surface for a while, as Tom said earlier, from their board. The Community Foundation, we were involved in several information data collection projects, as was United Way and the county. So we were natural partners for the initiative. We were pleased to be asked to join, and we've already seen the benefits of being at the table, helping to shape the indicators, and also being able to readily use them in projects that we're working on currently.
Mm-hmm. And Patrick, the United Way, when I think of the United Way, I think of sort of you have to be a Renaissance man to able to coordinate all the different activities that are involved with United Way. United Way it has to be one of the most challenging positions in each and every county or all the areas. How did you bring all your participants from the United Way to the table to be involved in this particular project?
Well, this was actually very easy. I didn't have to do much work on that. Our United Way in Lancaster County has a very engaged group of key volunteers and stakeholders. Our board was looking for this before I arrived a little over a year ago. The idea of measuring what's important in the community so that we know what the most important things are for us in terms of driving our work is critical to us. So it really wasn't a big sell to say, let's be at the table with the Chamber and the Community Foundation and our local county government in determining what those things are that need to be measured so that we can formulate some action on them. It was an easy sell.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, Scott Martin. Scott, you are a Lancaster County Commissioner. How long have you been a commissioner?
6 years now.
6 years, okay. And did you ever imagine in this first 6 years that you'd be involved with a project of this sort?
Well, I'm not that surprised because as I look around the table, we've partnered with these entities. That's the Lancaster County way to work together, whether it's with the United Way doing our 10-year plan to end homelessness, the various issues that we work with the Chamber to try to resolve. So I think there was a natural stage for the groups to come together and tackle something of this magnitude. And it's very important for our community. Obviously, our Chamber recognized that back when they passed it as part of their mission statement, but we all realize the power of information, the power of data. A lot of that's used when making public policy decisions and gives a good snapshot of where we're at as a community. Some directly can impact county government. When you look at voter participation rates, when you look at things like various workforce data that's out there, we obviously can take that data and use that in a way to help us make decisions. And hopefully some of our other folks out there, state representatives, state senators, other folks, our local congressmen, can also take that kind of information to see how we're doing in our community and whether we're improving on certain things or if there are things that we can do from our angle, from the public sector angle, that can help achieve some of the goals that we set.
Mm-hmm. And now when we look at the findings of this first report, Scott as a Lancaster County Commissioner and Tom as the President of the Lancaster County Chamber, you must both be thrilled with the findings that Lancaster County is perhaps the most prosperous place in the whole United States. Did you have any idea that was going to be?
I don't know if you read the same report I did, Charlie.
That's when I read the report. That's what I came out with. Or am I misreading the report?
I'd say you're overstating the report. The thing about the indicators is that every indicator kind of stands on its own, and we do better in some areas and not as well in other areas. And while there is a lot to be proud of in terms of where Lancaster County is positioned, there's still a lot of work to do. And we aren't the model of prosperity that we could hold up and say to the country or the world, this is the place to be. But we do aspire to it, and we do hope that this can provide us somewhat of a roadmap to get there.
And I think, Charlie, where you might be focusing on is the Life Satisfaction Index, which we were thrilled to see on that measure that Lancaster County actually ranked #1 in the nation for life satisfaction
That's
index.
what it's all about, isn't it?
But again, I think to Tom's point, that's one indicator, one sliver, one perspective. There are many others in the report. I would say it's largely positive. Neutral to positive, but there's a lot of work yet to be done, and really the intent is to focus on where we are, get a baseline, and galvanize energy in the community to move the needle to improve on some of those indicators that we're maybe not ranked #1 in the nation on.
Okay. Obviously, we want to maintain doing well in those areas, but obviously we're setting a bar in terms of where we want to improve in other areas.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what does the United Way do with the results from this first study? How do you use them in your organization?
Well, it's interesting that this show is called Behind the Headlines, because I think all of us would say that the real work of this project is behind the indicators. So when you look at these indicators and you see the trends you're looking at with the positive results that are in the Life Satisfaction Index and things like that, if you go behind some of them, in education, for example, you find in 16 school districts that there are some that are doing very well, and there are some that still have a significant gap in terms of achievement and school attendance and kindergarten readiness and all these things. So when you go deeper into the data, you realize there are those pockets where we need to improve. United Way is focused on education, financial stability, and health. So there are pieces of this that fit really well with us and align well with us, and we'll define our work by that. But the really cool thing about this project is the collective impact that we're starting to talk about and seeing potential for. And when I say collective impact, I mean that in terms of the model that's now becoming quite popular across the social sector around the United States, a model that came out of the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And when we think about those things that we can all agree on, I like that Scott said Lancaster County works this way, and I found that to be true in my brief time here so far. is we're all saying, why do we need to do this by ourselves? Why do we need the sole credit for it? Why do we need to reinvent the wheel? There are a number of us working on similar issues, and if we can synergize that and work together, that's when the huge opportunities really start to open up.
Okay, Scott, you are one of several county commissioners in Lancaster County. What is the opinion of the other? What is the attitude of the other county commissioners, and how did you get them to come along?
Well, I'm the liaison to this, but obviously we wouldn't be involved unless we had the majority of the board supportive of this. And you know, my colleagues are great to work with. They're just involved in the community and a lot of the partnerships that we have than anybody else. They may have their own projects that they're working on, but they fully support the efforts that we have here, and they fully recognize the potential of the data and the value of the data as it means to us making public policy decisions, and including what it means to each of the organizations that we work with. I mean, we're all interchanged in some fashion in the work that we do, and I think that this partnership moving forward will continue to grow and be beneficial for the people who live in our community.
Tom, as you look at the results of the first draft, the first-year study, what has it done to inspire the Chamber to additional or future action? What actions will the Chamber be taking this next year and in the immediate future?
Well, I think the first thing it did was inspire the Chamber to continue with this Prosperity Indicators report and to make sure that we're not making this just a short-term project, but rather long-term project, because the real value comes over the years when you're establishing trends of like indicators year after year after year and seeing the direction that you're headed. So that step one is we're committed to this report moving forward. The other things that kind of rise out of this that influence where we want to head are things like the number of patents, tracking the number of patents per year that are created in Lancaster County, because we recognize that for a county to be really successful, we need to create a spirit of innovation and have a community that looks to innovation. So what the Chamber can do to try to promote entrepreneurism, to try to introduce new ideas to the business community, to create more successful business opportunities, are things that we want to do to make sure that things like patents and business growth happens.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, what about the Lancaster County Community Foundation? Had your foundation been involved with anything like this in terms of a study of the county as a whole previously?
This is unique. We have done some collective work with the United Way, with the Chamber, with the county. In the past, we did a project called Lancaster 2020, really a community conversation, a one-time snapshot. But Tom's really key on the idea that this is annually. This is a report card that we can focus on, and there are three things the Community Foundation, as a funder in Lancaster County, that we're really using this report actively right now for. One is we're doing internal organizational strategic planning. This report is the top piece in our background information around what should we be focusing on as a community foundation. Secondly, we're already using it in our grant making process to assess when applications come in and projects come in, are they driving key areas that have been identified as key areas on the indicators? And I'm working very closely with Patrick and other funders. We have a group called the Funders Forum. This report is providing the basis for us to really galvanize around issues that we might come together at some point in the near future to maybe co-fund, but to definitely to hold up as funders as priorities in the community for community transformation.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, when you were working on this project in its initial stages and you are discussing with all these other individuals and organizations what the indices should be of prosperity, did you have a difficult time among your members trying to agree on what the indices should be for prosperity?
No, because the ones that are important to us are in there, the ones that are important to the county are in there, the ones that are important to each of these partners and others are in there. It's a pretty broad, there's 6 total areas and I think 35 complete indicators in these 6 categories. What Sam is talking about, I think, is that next phase of this indicator project, which is, one, let's put the report card out there, change the conversations in the community, get people thinking about it and talking about it, and then 2, let's hope that there's some action that comes, that some organization, some entity steps up and says, you know, this set of indicators right here is really not good enough, and if we want to be prosperous 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we really need to take action on some of these things. So the collective impact thing that we keep talking about is this idea that you have to have a shared measurement. You have to agree on the metric and define what prosperity is. Two, you have to have a shared agenda at some point, which is what the Funders Forum that Sam just referenced is working to come up with next. And so all of us can find our individual parts in it, but it's that where can we find the intersections, the sweet spots, those places where we can all work on together. That's really where the potential of this lies.
Before I go on to Scott, I want to mention, I want to ask both of you, Patrick and Sam, about the whole notion of limited resources. There are only so many resources that are available to do a study of this sort. So you folks, though, have some ideas on leveraging additional resources so you can continue this into the future. Would you talk about that for a moment, Sam?
Well, I think from the standpoint of funding the study, I think we've come together and we've built the framework, and now it's a matter of investing in updating those data points on a regular basis. Some are available every year for updating. Some are available on the spot day by day. Others we don't get till the census. So these things will change over time, and we're committed as a community foundation to remaining at this table with our partners to continue funding this data, because we believe it's pivotal as a starting point for community conversation. Now, how do you this as a report card is a report card. It doesn't necessarily change anything unless, as Patrick put it, and we've already seen already witnessed, it changes the conversation. There are hundreds of organizations, for-profit, nonprofit organizations, individuals who are passionate about Lancaster County. What our hope is that each one of them, both individually and collectively, will come together and galvanize around indicators that are most important and most relevant to them in their work, and that the needles will move and we'll be able to gather data around projects, initiative, and action that's taking place in the community by the community. The Funders Forum, again, is one example of where a group of similar organizations with similar purposes are really coming together around a conversation how we could work collectively to impact these measures.
Patrick, what is your assessment of the Funders Forum in 15 seconds?
The funds are scarce, like you mentioned. All communities have scarce resources, so the leveraging is what's key. And the real potential lies in the large external funders that are looking for collaborative projects in communities to fund and infuse support into a community.
Scott, in the last 15 seconds, are you and the other county commissioners going to the County Commissioners Association or to other counties and saying, look what we've done with the Chamber here in Lancaster County and promoting this concept?
Well, I think that's a great idea.
I do too.
I've gotten to work with Tom on some other things that we've done up here in the Harrisburg area, seeing him present with sustainable communities and things. But I think that now that we have kind of gotten through the baby steps, though we're still maybe in the childhood stages of getting this forward, but we have the foundation set. I think being able to talk to other counties and share this as a best practice, whether it's as counties, as various chambers, or other nonprofits, I think is a good thing to share for the community.
Okay, we want to thank all of you for coming. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We'd love to have you all come back and talk about the progress of this project, because I think you're establishing a real model for other counties and other chambers around the county, around the Commonwealth, excuse me. We'll see you again next week on Behind the Headlines. Tune in then. We'll see you then.